Hello and welcome to Everything Isaiah, where we'll have a verse-by-verse conversation about Isaiah's prophecy. My name is Paul, and I'm here today with my co-host Isaiah.
Shalom, my friends. I'm coming. Give me just 1 minute.
Isaiah, what are you doing?
I have a friend to bring along. Here we are. Let me introduce you to Winnie.
Hello, Winnie. Why did you bring a donkey with you?
Oh, what a perfect way to introduce you to our discussion today.
Well, I'm curious to see what you have in store for us today. Let's jump in. Today we're discussing verse 3 of Isaiah chapter 1. Okay, I'll read if you're ready.
Looks like Winnie is ready.
That's good enough for me. A bull knows his owner and an ass his master's stable. Israel does not know. My people do not perceive. Ah, now I see why you brought Winnie. Ass is another word for donkey.
Indeed. There is a very important principle to understand before we get too far.
And what principle is that?
It is how I use symbolism, like in these animals, to help you understand what I saw in my vision.
I see. I'm ready to learn.
Paul, what do you know about cattle?
Well, I raised some cows, so I know a little bit. This is a video of Bree when she was a calf and her mama Hava, and her brother Jack.
Then you know that these animals know their owners.
I'm not sure that's true. My cows never paid any attention to me.
That may be so. But what happened when you put some grain in a bucket?
Well, they came running.
And where did they sleep?
Usually in the stall I built for them.
Then is it safe to say that your cows knew their owners and knew where their stable was?
Yes, I guess that is true.
So as simple as these animals are, they know where they are fed, and they know who their master is. Do you remember how I used symbolism in my book?
Yes, it seemed everything you wrote was symbolic. Usually they symbolize people or types of people.
That is correct. And that is the case with these animals. But before we get into that, there is something else. Do you see a difference between these two animals?
Well, one is a cow and the other is a donkey. I'm not sure what you're getting at. Is there something that I'm not seeing?
You are correct, but if you grew up where I did, you would know that one of these is kosher and the other is not.
Kosher. I've heard of that word. What does it mean?
Well, kosher simply means that it is clean.
You mean like it's been washed?
Not clean in that way, no. It means that it is pure and clean for Jehovah. A kosher animal is one that can be used sacrificially, or that is lawful to eat. In the law of Moses, Jehovah gave a list of animals that were kosher and not. Basically, any animal that chews the cud and has a split hoof is ritualistically clean. That would include cattle, goats, sheep, deer, but that means horses, donkeys, pigs, and other animals are not clean.
So in this verse you listed a bull and a donkey. You're saying a bull is kosher and a donkey is not.
That is correct. Oxen or bulls are animals that are used for work. But they are also clean before Jehovah and can be sacrificed as an offering for him. It also means that they are good to eat. I love a good hamburger.
But that's not the same for the donkey? Does that mean you could not own donkeys?
No, we could have donkeys. They are great work animals. It was just not lawful to eat them. I'm not going to eat you, Winnie. They are not ritualistically clean before Jehovah. You would not sacrifice a donkey. That would be blasphemous. Can you see the symbolism I am trying to explain?
Let me think. So both these animals know their master, even though one is clean and one is, not.
That's a start. Keep that in mind while we talk about the next part. Do you remember our conversation about symbolism when we studied the first verse of my book?
Yes, we said you often use symbolism to describe types of people or behaviors. In fact, one of the ways you use symbolism is through animals, like Winnie.
I did. Keep going.
Well, throughout your book, you used all sorts of animals as symbols. Like we've talked about, you used bulls and donkeys. You also used sheep and rams, but you used a lot more than that. You used all sorts of birds, snakes, lions, and even bears. Each animal represents a type of person. And if we're talking about bulls and donkeys, we can see what they mean symbolically from how you reference them in your book.
What do you mean?
Well, as we mentioned before, a bull is a kosher animal, right? Many of the ways you use this animal in your book is when describing sacrifices. If a bull represented a person, that tells me that this is a person who is considered kosher before the Lord. Or in other words, it is a covenant individual before God. So either someone who has made a covenant or someone who is part of the house of Israel. Remember, the house of Israel was considered the Lord's people. A donkey, on the other hand, is not considered kosher. So if a donkey represents a person, that would mean that he or she is a non-covenant person, either someone who has not made a covenant yet with God, or someone who is not of the lineage of Israel.
That is very well put. So how would you integrate that knowledge into this verse?
I think you're saying that covenant people know their master, and non-covenant people know their master's stable.
Very good. That is part of it, but there is more.
Isaiah, before we go on, can I ask a dumb question?
What is that?
I noticed in our last video, and again in this verse, the scripture is written line by line with indentations. Why is that?
Ah, yes, that is an excellent question, and one that needs to be answered. Most of my book is not written like a story. It is poetry. Each of these lines and verses are like stanzas in poetry.
Oh, that makes sense now. What would you call that? Maybe I'll call this poetic pentameter. I noticed in your writings that you repeat almost everything that you say, but in different words. The bull knows his owner, and the ass his master's stable. The two lines are very similar, and though the words are different, they mean the same thing.
Sometimes they mean the same thing. Sometimes they will contradict each other. Pay attention to that poetic pattern, and you will learn a lot from my writings. This is how I define some of my symbolism.
What do you mean by that?
Let's take a look, and I will show you. You can easily see that bull and ass are coupled together in this stanza. Also, owner and master stable linked together. But these two lines give only half the meaning. You cannot understand what I am trying to say without finishing the stanza. Look at the second part. Israel links to my people. We can see clearly that Jehovah is saying Israel is his people. But here is where the poetry layers with additional meaning. What is it that Israel does not know? You see, they don't know what the ass and the bull do know. And what is that?
Their master, of course.
Exactly. That is the third part here. See how the word know in the first line links with the word does not know in the third line and do not perceive in the last line. All these are linked together.
Wow, so in essence, you're saying they do not know their own God.
I am not saying that in essence. I am declaring that ancient and modern Israel do not know Jehovah. But look at these deeper. Notice the bull and the ass are singular words, not plural. One bull and one ass know their owner and their home. But the entire nation of Israel do not know Jehovah. What does that tell you?
I think what you're saying is that some individuals, both covenant and non-covenant individuals, have come to know God, even though the nation as a whole, God's own people, don't even know him.
That is right. And how does someone come to know Jehovah?
You know, that's a very good question. Can I introduce you to a friend of mine that I think can help us out? This is someone who has come to know God personally.
That would be amazing. I love to meet new people.
Isaiah, please meet my friend Misty. She's a big fan of yours.
Thanks, Isaiah and Paul. It's really good to be here.
Hey, Misty, we've been talking about coming to know God. I was wondering if you can teach us a little bit about what it means to come to know God.
Oh my, that's a big topic. I'll help where I can. What does it mean to know God? Well, I guess you really come to know God by building a personal relationship with Him.
A personal relationship. So you're saying there's a difference between knowing about God and personally knowing Him?
Oh, absolutely. No question about it.
So how do you come to know God personally?
Well, I think my path to knowing Him may be a little different than others. There was a time in my life where I began feeling and seeing a lot of darkness. Even though I went to church every week, it got worse. I didn't know how to handle that darkness. It was affecting my family and my whole life. It became overwhelming and I needed help.
Oh, wow. So what did you do?
Well, I've prayed all my life like most people, but that doesn't mean I really communicated with heaven. Most people pray out of obligation or expectation, with a list of things they are grateful for and things they want. They never learn how to listen to God. I think the element that was missing from my prayers was the desire to actually hear Him and the belief that I could. But I knew something needed to change. I had to change. My desperate need for help became the motivation for me to connect with heaven in a way I had never experienced. I felt a burning inside me and finally prayed to Him with real intent in my heart. As I did, I was overcome with so much darkness, I thought I would die. But just as I thought I was at the very end, beings of light came and saved me. When I called out to God, He answered me.
That's amazing.
Yes, it was. I felt such great happiness and love, unlike anything I've ever felt. Since then, I continued to receive answers, and I followed what I heard. It wasn't easy. Even though He answered me, there was a lot of work I had to do. But that was where my journey started. Since then, I have drawn closer and closer to Him. Now, I know God intimately, but it took time and experience.
I bet others would love to come to know God like you have. Do you have some steps on how to come to know Him?
That's interesting you ask that. I'm just finishing a book on that very subject. It's called Conversations with Heaven. In it, I teach people through my own experience how to know God.
Oh, that's perfect. How would you summarize your experiences?
It's a simple list. The first thing you have to do is talk with Him. I don't mean those empty prayers that were taught in church. I mean to really talk to Him like one friend talks to another. That means you also must listen. Try to understand what you are hearing. It's hard to hear Him at first, but it gets easier over time. Then you have to build trust with the Lord. Let Him know you're serious and committed. That means you must act on what you hear. Sometimes that's scary. You may not know at first if it's from you or from God, but act on it anyway. If it brings you closer to Christ, do it. There's a lot more to it than that, but those are the first basic steps.
Well, that sounds straightforward enough.
Yes, in my book, I have 6 key elements to talking with Jesus. Basically, they include having gratitude and being humble, then asking and listening. Afterward, taking action and discerning the results. These are my steps to receiving personal revelation.
Thank you for sharing that amazing experience, Misty. That is not much different than how I came to know Jehovah. You must really be invested if you want to know Him. It is not a simple process.
You're right. You must step into the power of heaven to make those personal connections.
I could not have said it better myself. That is why I said Israel does not know Jehovah, and his people do not perceive who he is. Most people are not willing to take the effort to get to really know him.
You cannot come to know God in a church pew. You must go to him personally. So in this verse, you're essentially saying that a few people here and there have come to know God. Even you, Winnie. But overall, the people of God, his covenant people, have not come to know their God. That reminds me of a scripture in Matthew. Jesus says that not everyone that says to him, Lord, Lord, will enter into his kingdom. And even though they will say they did so many wonderful works in his name, in the end, he will tell them that they aren't welcome. He will say, I never knew you. I think he's really saying that we didn't know him.
All the more reason to get to know him now.
Oh, well said. In my vision, I was not talking about ancient Israel as much as I was forewarning you. It is critical that you come to know Jehovah.
Wow, I'll take those words to heart. Well, that brings us to the end of our verse and the end of this video. Misty, thank you so much for being here.
It was my pleasure. I love helping people come to the Lord.
What a beautiful goal.
Oh yes, and Winnie, I suppose that we should thank you too. Okay. Well, if you've enjoyed talking with me and Isaiah, like this video and subscribe for future conversations. Thank you for joining us today.
Wonderful, and thank you. Now, how do I get this donkey out of here? Come on, you stubborn mule. Oh.